Hello. You're listening to Cracking, Episode 3. A 3-part audio drama about mental health and fatherhood. After each episode, we chat to a peer support worker in the field about the topics raised within. Some listeners may find the following difficult to listen to due to themes of postnatal mental health problems.
I don't know what I'm doing here. God, this is awkward. Where the fuck is Rachel? Why isn't he saying anything? Perhaps she's late. No, she's never late for anything. I don't really want to do this. What am I supposed to say? For fuck's sake, Rachel, I don't want to do this on my own.
Sam, should we start? How are you?
I've not seen Rachel since last week. Since I lost it in the last session. Sorry about that, by the way.
Well, there's no need to apologise for having feelings. Do you think you're coping okay?
Yeah. I've been staying at mates, so.
Were you hoping to see Rachel here?
Rachel's obviously made up her mind, hasn't she? I could just go if you want.
Why are you here, Sam? Why don't you tell me about the early days, just after Tommy was born?
Well, when she was first ill and ended up in hospital, I went to my dad's place with Tommy. And for some reason I wouldn't let anyone else do anything. I had Tommy in bed with me in the spare room in my dad's house, just thinking, what the hell is going on? Why am I here? I hadn't really slept, and I hadn't eaten that well. It was just like, for Christ's sake, I can't believe this is happening.
What did you do?
Well, you're on edge all the time because you're not sure what's going to happen and nobody's giving you any advice, so it was exhausting. There was this one time, right, I was so tired, and I lost it, and I was shouting, and I knew that I just needed to get out, and I sat outside the house in my car because I didn't know where else to go. I just wanted to go back to how things were, before Tommy was born. Sorry, I know that sounds horrible, and I don't mean it like that. I love Tommy, but things were different. Rachel was different. She was happy.
And how did that make you feel?
It was exhausting. It was almost like having two babies. I mean, she just couldn't do anything. I mean, I was shattered. I'd been up all night. And Rachel was saying these things like,
I can't look at myself in the mirror.
She just seemed empty.
I can't be happy.
And I'm like, yeah, you can.
I can't possibly think how life's going to feel happy again.
And I'm like, it will. Do you trust me?
You can't fix me, Sam.
And I'm hugging her so tight. And she's like a dead weight. It's like she's not there. And she says,
I don't see any other solution.
I don't know what to think. I just stand there and she's saying these things like,
Sam, we need to get him adopted. I've made a terrible mistake. I want my old life back.
and I was scared.
Sam, we need to get him adopted and then everything will be normal again.
I mean, I've never been so scared. I couldn't stand it. And I just needed to get away. So, I sat outside the house in my car. And I was like, shit scared. I didn't want to go back in there. And I didn't tell anyone. I mean, for fuck's sake, Rachel wanted to give our baby away. I didn't know if she would be there when I got home from work sometimes. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't regret having Tommy. I wasn't prepared for all this other stuff. So when I saw my mates, I just wanted a break from it all. I wanted to sort it on my own, and I thought I'd done that.
And what about now?
Yesterday, I was in my car, and I see this couple with their kid, and they look really happy. And then I'm crying, and I don't know why, and I know it's stupid, but I couldn't stop. Rachel's fine now, and Tommy's brilliant. It's just that some things are just still a bit hard sometimes. Sorry, I don't know what it is. I think I just got a lot of different things just going around in my mind all the time. Sorry. So I thought I was fine, and then this happened. I think it's just because I haven't seen them all week. And I think I get these moments where I look at her and I think, fuck, you were in that place and you got out of it, but I got through all that, so why now it feels like I'm in a different place, and I don't know how I'm gonna get out of it. I just love her to bits, and I just don't want anything to. I don't want her to leave me. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with me.
It's okay.
I'm sorry I didn't come last week. I should have let you know.
It's good to see you.
Should have let you know.
I'm glad you're here.
Are you?
Maybe I was a dick. I don't know why I said those things.
Well, perhaps it's because you are a dick.
How's Tommy? Is he?
He doesn't understand why you're not there.
Yeah. Neither do I.
That's the problem. You really have no
Hey,
idea.
Rach, that's not fair.
Seems pointless being here.
Has his tooth come through yet?
You'd know if you weren't putting us through this.
Rachel, I've messed things up, but I don't know what else to say.
I don't think we can come back from this.
What about Tommy?
The baby I didn't
Rachel,
want. I've been to hell and back.
yeah, I know, I was there. You look tired.
Not really sleeping.
Is Tommy waking you up?
No, he sleeps right through.
Oh. That's good.
Are you sleeping?
Yeah. So.
What did you dream about?
Dunno.
What did you dream about, Thomas?
What?
How do you shut it all out?
I don't.
Don't you? You sit there trying to pretend that everything's back to normal. But it's not normal, is it? We just exist in the same house. I can't
I
bear
don't know
it.
what you want me to say. Actually, I don't sleep. I haven't really slept properly since you went back to work.
Well, that's nearly a year ago.
Yep. And I feel like shit.
Why haven't you said anything?
I don't know.
I can't believe it's been going on for that long.
What, do you think I'm bullshitting you?
No, I just thought I would have known.
Well, I'm good at pretending. When you were ill, there was so much going on, I didn't really have time to think about it. Only now I realise just...
Realise what?
how scared I am about it happening again.
Like I'm fucking defective.
No, it's just...
Well, what?
I don't want to have to go through that ever again.
And you think I do?
No, look, you twist my words. That's...
Do you like being a dad?
What sort of a question's that?
Do you?
I love Tommy.
It's just me then.
No, I don't want us to split up, Rach.
What do you want?
I want to come home.
Carry on as before?
I love you.
I don't know if that's enough.
Something good has got to come out of this.
I don't want us to stay together just for Thomas.
Yeah, no, neither do I.
Why haven't we had sex since Thomas was...
It's not you. It's me.
Is there someone else?
No, Christ, no.
Well, it's because I've been ill.
I'm scared.
Of me?
Of you getting pregnant. I can't go through that again.
You have to have sex to get pregnant, Sam.
Oh, Christ, can we just stop talking about it then?
Do you not want to?
Sometimes, when I do fall asleep, I wake up and it feels like I'm choking on glass. And I'm so fucking scared.
Sam.
I go and sit in my car until I can breathe again.
Sam, I'm so sorry.
It's fine, I'm a fucking weirdo.
You're my weirdo.
I do want to, Rach. I just can't stop thinking, what happens
I'm
if...
on the pill.
No, but, what if there's a cock-up?
That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Oh my God. Rachel Williams, you are obsessed with sex.
We can take our time. After everything we've been through, we can get through this. Do you trust me?
Yeah.
Cracking is an All Right Mate production written by Callie Hayes and directed by Kevin Johnson. Rachel was played by Georgia Robinson and Sam by Tom Bowdler. Cracking was edited by Hugh McCann. This audio production was made with support from DadPad, the essential guide for new dads. Find out more about DadPad at thedadpad.co.uk. Find out more about All Right Mate at allrightmateproject.com. We are now joined by Andy Chambers and Stefan Edwards to discuss this episode. So, Andy and Stefan, what do you think is going on for Sam in this podcast?
I think it's interesting. He's having to deal with a lot of his emotions, but also whilst worrying about how his partner's doing. I think that's quite common, that you're having to juggle in these kind of situations. You're having to juggle, trying to make sure that you're okay whilst you're also kind of consumed by how your partner's doing. And I think it's interesting as well. And again, this is quite common for guys. I think that in that he was so consumed with looking after his other half, he's actually getting to his own sort of addressing his own mental demons on the issue kind of later, further down the line, and it's clearly kind of causing quite a lot of stress between them in their relationship, that they're both at very different, well, probably at similar places, but at very different times. So they don't seem to be working well as a unit. Whereas actually, kind of as they start to talk about it, they seem to realise that they do have, a lot of common ground there. Really, they're just in different places, and it's just finding that way. I think he's trying to find that way to support her and get some support back from her, and trying to sort of get them both on the same page. At the end of the day, they're dealing with the same, kind of stresses, really. And just trying to kind of he keeps trying to steer the conversation in a positive way as well, which I think is good. They're snapping at each other a little bit, but yeah, he's trying to be constructive and he's trying to find a positive way out of it for their whole family unit. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think it probably will hopefully resound with a lot of dads who find themselves in that situation where they're trying to look after themselves and a partner, and also, as I said, it's quite common for dads to arrive perhaps a little later at addressing these issues and having to sort of play catch up a little bit. On kind of finding the help they need.
I think one of the other things that really stuck out for me was the resentment. For dads, and we see that quite a lot, in that there is you obviously love the person that you're with and you want to help them through it, but you're very much in a supportive role, and there's no appreciation of that while it's going on, because you're firefighting through the whole thing. And then at the end of it, you kind of lose a sense of who you are in it, and where you don't want to feel resentful towards a person, but at the same time, you get into kind of conversations around blame and how that feels for you, and whether you feel that you've been ignored and all that kind of stuff. And actually, there's a whole process to that of trying to understand where that fits for you as an individual, whilst at the same time trying to maintain your relationship in the more positive place that it is now in. There's no aspiration for either of you to want to go back to where you were, but you are having to bring up new subjects that might take you back there in a different guise, effectively, and that's really tough, I think. And she says that quite clearly. Do you blame me, kind of thing? Is that what you're saying? It's my fault. And whilst as having been in a similar situation myself, you don't want to blame the other person. That's not what you want, but you do feel kind of aggrieved at it, and you've got to process that somehow. And so I think that's it's for you two to then work together to kind of, you then need kind of balance on the other side for your partner to be able to support you through the flip side of it as well, which I think can be a real challenge. And you can sense it in his voice when he's kind of like, no, I don't blame you. But inwardly he's kind of like, I blame someone, you know, there's like a sense of that something's happened here and I need to process it and I don't want to point the finger at you. But so, yeah, I think there's that's the kind of aftermath of it, I suppose.
That's really interesting, that tendency that something always has to be someone's fault. Someone's always kind of accountable. And in terms of the sort of challenges that Sam and sort of fathers in general, or men in general, people in general, have in terms of acknowledging their own distress once their partner has recovered. So I guess that is father specific. Do you think people try and avoid acknowledging it or have difficulty acknowledging it? And from your experience, how do people kind of get to that place?
I mean, I think men in general do struggle more outwardly to process emotions, to be open to facing the difficulties they're having. The kind of keep calm, carry on thing is still, it's a changing landscape, but it's certainly not moved yet to where we want it to be. But I think specifically for dads that who've kind of been through this sort of situation, it sort of follows on from that sense of like knowing where you are as a couple now, and understanding what you've kind of, usually these things they're not short-lived. They're normally, you know, months, sometimes years in terms of people's experience of postnatal depression or whatever it is. And so, like with anything, that everything becomes normal to some extent, regardless of whether you want it to be normal. So you're kind of, they're trying to find their way through what does a new normal look like, and who are we now as a couple, as individuals, as a family. Now you're better, and whether you feel better as a dad or not is obviously a challenge in itself. But you know, trying to kind of navigate that as a couple and get to a place where you feel stronger, because I think most people who do come through it stay together and kind of come out of it are able to kind of look at it and feel stronger for the experience they've had. They certainly, that's my experience of it, is that I feel closer to my wife than I ever have done, and at the same time I would never want to go through it again, but at the same time I'm grateful for the experience and what it's taught me. But the challenge is very much facing that, and also acknowledging the fact that do you have a problem? Do you have something that's come out of the back of it that really until now it's kind of been parked in a corner because you just literally haven't had time or capacity to face any of it? And there's often, you know, being a new dad's as challenging as being as a new mum sometimes, and actually it becomes about priorities. And if mum's really unwell, then, and you just feel a bit down or whatever, well, that might develop over time, but you just get used to it. And then eventually, once you're given the freedom to kind of explore it, well, then you don't really know what it looks like, and you don't really know what you're facing. So then you've kind of got to admit or be brave enough to kind of ask for help through charitable organisations or through your GP, midwives, health visitors, whatever that route takes, and be able to admit that you feel like there's something going on for you as well, you know. And I suppose be brave enough to think that might take you back to a place that you've been to already, you know.
Yeah, I think there definitely can be a hesitance, can't there? Because if you've had a, you know, as you say, it can last, you know, long periods of time. And if you've got this long period of time where you know the mum is in a really bad place, and eventually you manage to sort of get through that, and you're in a better place, or she's in a better place, it's kind of easy to then think that because she's in a better place, you as a family are in a better place. And you maybe, if you're then kind of escaping that sort of firefighting situation, you have the time to reflect, and you maybe do then realize that you're not in a great place. Maybe there's a hesitance then to sort of drag your family back into that kind of mental health setting and kind of go and find that help. But I think if you don't, then you just end up end up burying it, and it will come out again in the future. You know, these things are always best addressed and best talked about. Especially, you know, it could be any trigger, but I think a lot of the time, if you as a couple decide to have a second child, for example, and you haven't kind of addressed those issues that are still sort of lingering from the first time, then that's always going to be a problem down the line, and it will come back to bite you, sort of thing. So I think that is always a tricky one, when you're helping a partner and then you sort of address your own needs second. You know, it's easy to be tempted to just kind of bury it, and it's never a good idea, I don't think.
Yeah, it's adjusting as well to the concept of your. I mean, self-care is something that we're really big on. In that, you know, even when you are supporting somebody else, if you don't look after yourself, then you're no good. You're not no good, but you're not as capable to be able to help somebody else. So you've really got to look after yourself, and actually, you're then trying to kind of navigate your way through that, and recognize that you might have some work to do on yourself, that you've probably got to reassess what that scene looks like again. And then it is a constant period of reassessment. And but I think Stefan made a good point there, that it becomes a very fragile thing to hold when you find your way out of it and you end up in a place that feels better. You just do not want it to break. You just want to kind of protect it in whichever way you can. And actually that might be okay. It might be that you've kind of reached a place where you can do that, but often there's probably some work to do. That it's, you know, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's an ongoing thing that people need to kind of look after their mental well-being. So it's having the courage to sort of take that step back in and say, we're not going to break this, we're just going to make it stronger, kind of thing. And that might mean that we have some work to do, and it might mean that it's hard for a little bit longer, but the outcome is that the end result of what we're holding is a stronger unit, and it is something that's much more difficult to break in the future, you know.
That's really interesting. That's there's a quote I heard about something like that, and they said, like, if you've got a bone that's broken and it healed in the wrong way, you kind of have to break it again to recast it. And you've kind of touched on what the next question is, in terms of how do men come to terms with having lived through their partner's episode of postnatal illness, and coming to terms for, you know, kind of, you suggested is quite an active thing, and it's not just a passive thing of letting, or, you know, necessarily just letting time kind of wash things over and bury things. But would you have any more to add to that kind of question about I guess, after the event, potentially, you know, a bit further down the line, how men come to terms with having lived through that kind of experience?
I mean, I think it can be like any trauma, really, in that you, I suppose it's healthy to reflect on it. And as I was sort of alluding to earlier, you know, my experience of it, I feel stronger now than I've ever felt. And actually, there is, to be given that knowledge, if I'd known that before I was going through it, it might not have made me feel an awful lot better at the time, but it would have certainly been a carrot, I suppose, to dangle, in that. And that doesn't feel like it now, but you know, in the future, you'll feel like a more rounded person, and you'll be able to kind of face things, you know, face difficulties more constructively, and be more balanced in terms of how they affect you. Not always, but, you know, it certainly gives you more tools to be able to do that. But I mean, I think it's about being kind to yourself, I suppose, and trying to balance, you know, that it will take time. It's not a quick fix, and it is something that if you go through a trauma for any length of time, in exactly the same way as it would be if you'd had an injury, if you'd broken a limb, or, you know, whether it be loss or whatever, it doesn't happen quickly. You know, it takes a long time for you to come to terms with it, and there will be little things that kind of trigger you and put you back in that place. But actually, I think the thing to come to terms with is kind of reflecting on each day, and kind of not actively, but kind of subconsciously having that courage to sort of face up to it and say, well, doing that reflection over periods of time and being able to say, where was I 3 months ago? What could I not do 3 months ago that I can do now? And what are the things that 12 months ago we couldn't do as a couple, or our family really struggled with, and kind of pocketing those? Because I think as humans, we have a tendency to kind of push towards never crediting ourselves with the things that we achieve, but rather focusing on the things that we don't achieve, or the things that, oh, we failed at that, or we didn't do that. And this is very much a case of how you can look back on those situations and really take stock of how far you've come as a couple, how you've come as an individual, and what that means for your kids. Because you've both had the courage to kind of go through it, and you've both had the bravery and the intelligence to kind of find your way, navigate your way out of it. So that means for your kids that they're going to be so much more capable potentially in future, because you can share that experience with them. And for most people, it's the first time they've been through it. So it's not like their parents can kind of say, oh yeah, we had postnatal depression 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Didn't exist, but it wasn't a thing that anyone really knew anything about. So we're probably the first generation of people that this is norm for. So it's up to us to kind of be able to kind of learn from it, and then be able to pass that on to our children in a way where what might have been 2 years for us might be 6 months for them. And that's the thing. You're not going to get away with it. It's an illness at the end of the day. These are all kind of mental health conditions, but they are things that we can learn from, benefit from, and take away. So I think it is trying to twist the narrative to, yeah, it wasn't fun, but look at all the positives we can take away from it if we're smart about how we look at it now.
I think as well, yeah, if you properly address it and you learn from that experience, and then as Andy says, it gives you the tools for the future as well, because you never know when something else is going to trigger that in the future. And obviously in the situation with this episode, having another child in the future would be an obvious one, but it could be anything that could trigger those emotions again. And having been through it once and dealt with it in a positive way, you then have a better set of tools in your armory to deal with it again. And I'm speaking to a dad at the moment actually who has said to me he's in a good place, but he's had mental health issues in the past which actually don't relate at all to being a dad, just sort of generally in his life. But he's worried that they may be triggered by the birth of their little one that they're expecting, and he's just kind of interested in coming along to some of our dads meets to kind of get ahead of that problem. So I think that's a really positive attitude. And I think if you're someone who's had maybe some mental health issues in the past and you have addressed them in a positive way, it gives you an increased level of self-awareness to kind of get ahead of those problems in the future. So yeah, it's another reason to not ignore these things and not bury them, and face them head on really, and get those tools to help you in the future.
It's the same as any problem, right? Any issue that you face, if you catch it early, then generally it's much easier to deal with. Say nip it in the bud, or whatever you call it, whatever your phrase is to go with it. But it is, and actually the longer you leave it, the harder it is to find your way back from, because A, it's developed, but B, it's also, you lose a sense of you lose a sense of the good bits, I suppose, of who you are and your identity and all those kind of things, and you've got to suddenly reconstruct all of them rather than just this one little bit. And as Stefan says, having the courage to face it once at least gives you a precedent to work to be able to say, I've done this before, I know I can do it again. And that might be, in that case, which I think is admirable, to be able to head on stare mental health in the face and say, I know you've come up for me before, and I'm going to be better at managing you this time than I was last time, and that means me being prepared for it as much as I can. And unfortunately with postnatal illness, that's not something that most people have the opportunity to do. But at the same time, by kind of making that connection and recognizing the fact that postnatal illness is really no different to any form of mental illness. It just happens to have an attachment to the fact you've had a child. If people are able to do that, and mental health is seen as a much more kind of regular, staying mentally fit, all those kind of things are part of people's everyday, then it's so much easier to contend with, you know.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. If you have been affected by any of the content raised in this episode, you can find a list of support that we have created on our website at www.allrightmateproject.com/find-support.